This is the revolution. This is our time to evolve. This is our time to come together, our time to really look at how powerful we are.
When it comes to safety and a person's health, the fact is that every single person has their own health profile. They have their own genetic profile.
Kids couldn't go do their well baby checks and wellness checks. So in SIDS alone, so sudden infant death syndrome, dramatically dropped by 30% because kids weren't being vaccinated.
I suggest adopting that open hand policy for greater peace and trust. And it doesn't mean we won't suffer, but we may suffer less from anxiety and worry and fear.
We've become obsessed with the effects. We have been obsessed with symptoms. And maybe it's time to look at things differently. Maybe it's time to make different choices. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Devin. I have a very special guest in person, close enough to hug and maybe cry. I should have grabbed Kleenex. We might have to have a Kleenex break at some point, but it's because I have so much love and appreciation and gratitude for this woman and her family and the road that we have traveled over the last few years together. She and her children will always be some of my favorite teachers, so it's my honor to introduce you to Rachel Hauber.
Thank you.
Hi. So Rachel's from Wichita here. We met in my office, but for people out there, just give them a little bit about like who you are and your kiddos' names or whatever.
So I'm from Wichita. I've mostly lived here my whole life, except for about in Colorado for about a decade ago. But I'm married to my husband, who's also from here. We have 4 boys who are 1, 3, 7, and 9. And yeah, live a pretty simple,
boy mom,
happy life.
Simple, yeah.
Well, as simple as it can be with 4 boys.
4 boys. Yeah.
It's loud.
And we, we have been a part of a mom group this year, and we did the Freedom Revival together, which we'll circle back to. But how are you this year? What? Loaded question, right? Yeah. But what has this year taught you, I guess, so far?
I don't know that I could know where to start with that. Honestly, this last year for me has really been just a huge year of unlearning and a lot of growth. So much unlearning of what I spent my whole life thinking was normal, good, the right thing.
Truth.
Yeah. And kind of just a lot of things from childhood, but I've just always kind of stayed small and stayed quiet to suit other people. And over the course of the last couple years, things have just happened in our life. And I've just learned sort of in a rough way that just doesn't suit me anymore, and it's not the way to move forward for us. So,
and the name of this show, this season, the way we're doing things is If They Knew, right? Because we hear that, I hear you hear it in books, you see it all over social media. If I would have known sooner, or if they knew what we knew, then they would do what we do. What is something that you're maybe thinking of as you say, like, I've learned the hard way? What's something you wish you would have known sooner, or you just in general wish more people knew?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is you have your own, like, God-given intuition, and there's so much noise in the world, and especially society now, and with social media and just all of the things. And it's really hard to kind of quiet all of that and like really trust yourself and your own intuition. And if I've learned anything and could say anything to specifically moms, but honestly even dads, it's you have to trust that own inner voice. Like, even if that means you're in the minority, you're the only one in your friend group, if something does not sit right with you, dig into it and don't turn away from it, and quiet that, and do whatever you can to dig deeper, find help, find more information, find a friend. I learned that the hard way because I didn't do that, and I've kind of paid the price for that, if you will, the hard way. But like, there's a lot of healing to be had and learning, and you can always walk your way back out of that.
So, did you get a manual on how to raise a child?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. If anybody out there, when you got pregnant or gave birth, received a manual with all the answers to the right way to do things, if you could just let us know, because I didn't. Yeah. And half of my practice is pediatric. And expecting, probably more than that, expectant mothers. And so we met a long time ago, back when you had 2 kiddos. And you're navigating a lot of tough stuff. And as a chiropractor, and being there for mom and kids, I hope that I don't put pressure. There's so much pressure.
Yeah.
So much pressure. And I quite frankly think bullying in healthcare in general, not from all sides, and a lot of pushed and forced agenda. My goal is to be a support, is to be a guide to help seek out the answers, you know. Walk us through this tough learning of maybe where you wish you would have leaned into that intuition. Because I've always viewed you as a very in tune, empowered woman. But I can see as the tears well up, you know, you went against that voice at some point. You heard it, but you didn't heed the call.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that, but if I guess I could condense it down. So my 2 older boys were fairly uneventful, good pregnancies overall for the most part. Like no major issues, complications, anything like that. And we weren't necessarily at the time trying for a third, but were very excited and pleasantly surprised when I got pregnant with a little girl. And not knowing this at the time, but went through some things, and shortly after having a flu shot, I miscarried her at 20 weeks. And did not at all associate the 2 of those incidences together. Never had any doctor, who I really loved and trusted my doctor, but saw a series of specialists, and everything was just very unexplained. We're just so sorry, there's no reason for it, sometimes this just happens. Yeah, it was awful. It was one of the most traumatic things we've walked through. And throughout the months that followed, I ended up having a second miscarriage. Several months later, was diagnosed with secondary infertility, and eventually that's how I ended up finding Devin. Is I had a friend that said to me, have you ever considered, chiropractic or acupuncture or anything like that? And I thought, well, no, but I don't have anything to lose. And I felt good about it because it wasn't a pill I was going to take every day or anything like that, which was just not the avenue we wanted to go down. Anyway, thankfully ended up getting pregnant with our 3rd son, and there was a lot that went into that because of previous, with the miscarriages and everything, I was deemed high risk, and I think I was still in such a place of emotional trauma from losing our daughter and losing our second baby after that, that I was kind of just
out of alignment with your trust in your body.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's so much fear I stood beside so many women, families in that time of miscarriage, and coming back from that and being able to trust your womb.
Oh, yeah. And
again.
I thought, mean, I went around, and there was a lot of shame that went into that too. It had to have been, I mean, I was convinced it had to have been something that I did. And so, yeah, there was just a lot of emotional work through that went into all of that. And I was kind of off and on a bit of a nervous wreck, trying not to be for my child that I was carrying. But yeah, it was honestly kind of just I went day by day because I was just petrified of losing him. And I wanted anything like for him to actually be born and be healthy. And thankfully he was. And he was perfect. He was just like the most happy, easygoing baby. He smiled and laughed and just developed kind of right on track, if you will. I know that can kind of vary for every child, but I mean, he was...
Hit milestones.
Yeah. Great. And kind of as time went on, for the most part, I mean, he was good. He did have fairly frequent ear infections, which at the time didn't sit right with me. I mean, I worried all the time, but my gosh, it seems like so common these days. Who do you know whose kids don't have like ear infections? And I thought, okay, I guess he just has more than my older two. And I don't know, didn't dive deeper into that and why that could be. And time went on, and around 12 months, he had started saying dada, he had started waving, clapping. I mean, his eye contact was perfect, all of these things. And within 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, kind of as soon as it came, it all went away, all of it. He screamed all the time. He cried, 90% of the day. He was stressed out. He constantly covered his ears, like holding his head, but holding his ears, and just wanted this like pressure on them. Really, and kind of just what seemed like to me like for no reason. It wasn't like there was a super loud noise or anything like that. He just did this frequently. His eye contact was little to none, hardly any responsiveness to his name. He didn't really have he kind of quit playing with toys, or if he did, it was in a very odd way. Like he would flip everything over, and there was just no kind of appropriate toddler play. He wanted to be under the table, and it was like he was just gone.
I remember the disconnection in his eyes. And this is one of those, this is unlike any of the other episodes, if you have watched anything else, of like, I bring people in and I want them to share, but this is the part in the story where we became teachers for one another, really where we became students of Baker, I think, you know. And I absolutely believe in divine timing and the hand of God in absolutely every piece of this. And I remember our conversation, and so to practitioners, this is the part in the story I wish I would have done things differently, or, we had conversations around things that I was seeing and the ear infections, and hey, maybe like, let's not do that next set of shots because there's this nervous system in this child is already so wildly off the edge. Like he's already struggling. His immune system's tapped out. He's got these ear infections. You can tell I can tell he's having headache symptoms. There's these things going on. Maybe let's look at vaccines, but I didn't want to push. And I kept it lighthearted. So to practitioners, you got to trust your intuition too. And a family is in your office for a reason. And there's going to come a time when you're called to share information or be supportive to the family. And I'm going to call to you, as I wish I could call back to me, to be louder, not quieter when your intuition calls. Because we had a conversation, but then, and you had that intuitive, like you shared at the Freedom Revival, this like, gosh, something's not right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and that even goes back to my older boys, even before all of this with Baker. Now looking back, I mean, something never sat right with me about taking them so frequently and what seemed like or felt like to me so many shots. I thought, but they're healthy. And I mean, it like just, I can't really honestly explain it other than I just had this gut feeling of, why am I doing this? And again, that goes back to like, there's so much guilt and shame that goes into, why did I not say, like, just stop, just pause. Like, nobody's driving you to this appointment. You're driving yourself and your kids, and like nobody's forcing you and saying like you have to go do this. But it very much, in the mentality that I was in at the time, felt like, but if I'm a good mom, then that's part of what you do. Like, you take them to all of these wellness appointments, and that's a part of it, right? That's the whole mind frame I was in. And so I thought, and I did start to have some conversations with our pediatrician, who at the time I thought I trusted and never really had too much of a reason not to. We never really had any major concerns or issues with any of the kids. But when I started noticing these things with Baker, and it's hard for me because I have to kind of calm. I still get a lot of anger and frustration about it. But I can very clearly go back to these conversations with the pediatrician of, like, he's covering his ears a lot and not for any certain reason. Again, like no loud noises, nothing's going on. He has these dark circles under his eyes. He seems disconnected. And every time I was told, that can be normal. Some kids just do that.
Because that time frame of saying data and waving and, and then that disconnection and then disconnected. Because there was a period I can remember in his eyes. It's like, Baker, where did you go?
Oh, yeah.
And, but you didn't, there was no diagnosis of autism. There was no diagnosis for.
No. So mind you, like, this is all kind of between like 13, 14-ish months when this is kind of all really happening. And yeah, this kind of went, and I remember asking the pediatrician, like, because it started to become a concern the more months went by of like, but he's not talking. And I said, but he started to, but he was talking. He had started developing that, and he had that eye contact, and he had started doing all of these things. And I mean, I'm no super professional, but I have 2 other boys, and this is wildly different than anything we went through with them. And I'm not understanding how he had these skills and like they just went away, and you're trying to tell me that some kids just do that and it's normal and we'll just wait and see. Like, wait and see if he gets them back. And I just still was in that place of, but I'm just a mom. Like,
there's an authority there, or an external validation that I think our culture, both hands responsibility to, because of cultural authority around healthcare professionals. Yeah. And it's just normal. It's the way we grew up. We got shots. We were fine. You had, it's like it. So there's so much that has gone into this. For a couple of different reasons, we wanted to share this conversation. I think that now, as a rollout where there's going to be a push for the whole world to receive a shot, it's important to look at all of it. And I get a lot like, that's outside your lane. Well, I'm a mom, so nothing's outside my lane because I protect my 5 and I lovingly support all these families, and I'm going to hand them the future. And I want to be able to look back with integrity and go, something was not right there, and we held a conversation. We realize we can't change the world, but we're both as mothers reaching out there going, you got big decisions to make. And there's time is of the essence, because there is, I feel like, more force and pressure than ever before.
Oh my God, yeah.
And so, I think that people see like the anti-vax movement. I hate that. term because it creates this polarity of like, you know, people with a brain and then these crazy angry women that we've
For
lost
no
our
reason.
rockers, right?
Right.
And so when people want to know, like, gosh, Dr. Devin, why are you so upset about the mask? Gosh, Dr. Devin, why won't you just walk the line? I would be doing a wild disservice to the lessons that Baker has carved out into our hearts to sit on a sideline and not say anything, to not be brave enough and talk about how long it's taken. Now, here is the part in the story. There's gonna be a gap there, where you poured into all these different avenues for him. I mean, you went searching. You said, okay, so no more of the traditional route. We're gonna get him adjusted. We're gonna do these supplements. You've done all these things, and I'm sure you would lovingly put together a list of resources for us to attach to this. But bring us to present. Like, so you shared this story for the very first time a few months ago. How is Baker today?
So the last year has been honestly transformative. Today, he is, more than anything, he's happy and he's present, and we feel like we have our child back. Like, he plays with his older brothers and he laughs and he interacts with all of us, and not just us, other people. Yeah, he's playing appropriately with toys. He
High five Santa.
Yes, he high-fived Santa last night, which was really honestly huge for him. Just to not have that fear and constant kind of what I called I mean, he was the most highly anxious, stressed out, terrified, like just crawling out of his skin for a good part of his life. You know, I mean, over a year he spent like that. And just to see him today, he kind of, I mean, I'm biased, I'm his mom, but I feel like he kind of lights up a room when he comes into it, and he's like the miracle of our house. And he started speaking, and I mean, we have a long way to travel still in our healing journey, but he has come so far. I mean, it's night and day difference. He can say all of our names, and like, he's just there again.
What do you think to the families that maybe have received an autism diagnosis or have kids that have these special needs, or they're noticing, you know, disconnection happening? What are a couple things that you would say, go check into this because it helped him?
I think the first thing is, I mean, at least in our experience, we've kind of felt like we got little to no direction. For us, it was, this is his diagnosis. He could very well be nonverbal his whole life, which, I don't know, nothing might devastate you like that, at least for me. And maybe go try rainbows. And I thought, what? That's it? And then they send you on your way. And I thought, and I just remember, I thought, hell no. Like, this will not be his life. I mean,
so tap into that hell no inside of you, because these children, they're in there.
They are. And listen, I'm the first to admit, like, I'm not normally like that kind of a person. I'm kind of quiet.
Very
I stay
reserved.
in my lane. Like, but I thought, but when it came to him and what we had gone through and just living with him daily like this, and I just thought, I said, there's no way. This did not happen for no reason. This will not be his life. And so, honestly, I mean, I kind of went off the deep end a little bit, and I stayed up to all hours of the night, getting my hands on anything and everything I could read, truly. I mean, researching, and finally kind of coming into these groups where I found other parents who started talking about healing for their child through some similar symptoms and things like that. And I thought, I'm not crazy. Like, there is healing to be had. I knew it. There has to be kind of a way to, you know, like, walk out of this. And so honestly, I guess what I would just say is, it's so easy to give into the devastation and the fear, and that's absolutely valid. But like, now's the time to, like, go all in on your gut and your intuition. And if I've learned anything, it is, like, nobody else is going to advocate for your child the way you will. And that is going to mean a lot of maybe difficult, hard conversations. You're going to have to walk away from people and ideals that you've had in your head your whole life. And it's uncomfortable. It's hard. But it's your child's life. And, you know, we've spent the last year and a half doing this. And honestly, I just, please, like, reach out to, like, to me, to find somebody to, like, talk to and get that information. Because if you're really having these feelings deep down, like, it's valid, and listen to it. And also, I would say, if I could go back, like I said, if you're uncomfortable and something isn't sitting right with you, like, take a break, take a breath.
Don't do it because you have to.
I felt so entrapped in this mentality of, like,
so fast.
Like, you have to do it. You have to stay on track. This is what good moms do.
Any decision. So yes, in
Not
talking about shots or wellness visits, but it's also like, do you try this supplement? Do you try that form of therapy? Do you do?
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot of that too.
Oh man, and there's no one size fits all. That we do know. But I am a firm believer. No one knows your child like you know your child. No one. And so that, hell no, I can't stop, won't stop. I'll find a way. God will deliver. Divine, universe, whatever you want to call it. If you call out for the doors to be opened, they will. You got to knock, but they'll be there. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen so many different things for Baker, the doctor in Kansas City. Yeah.
So through all of this, like, we've started working with several different therapists, and like you said, that is for sure not a one-size-fits-all, and as difficult as it might be, do not be afraid to walk away from that. A lot of places that work very well for other people, and I don't take away from that, but we kind of wasted a little bit of time, I thought, like, being patient, trying these things, and then I thought, nope, this is not the right fit for my child. They knew it from day one, and here we are 2 months later, and this is, like, I don't have time to waste. He's only getting older, and he's still miserable every day. And so finally, part of, like, my research was, is there a functional medicine practitioner, or, like, a lot of times they're referenced as DAN doctors, things like that. And I really struggled finding one around here in the Midwest. So I thought, well, we might be looking at traveling. Anyway, long story short, I ended up finding a functional medicine practitioner in Kansas City. And I thought, I just kind of, there again, something in me had this little feeling. And he had several videos online featuring families that he'd worked with. And there was something about him that I thought, this feels right. I'm just going to go see. So I loaded Baker in the car one day, just me and him. We drove to Kansas City because I thought, I need to meet him in person. I need him to see Baker. And that was 1.5 years ago. And it has been truly, for us, ultimately, I think, the biggest thing, because he has worked so much with us to really heal various issues that Baker had going on in his body. I mean, bacteria, parasites, and
gut issue.
I mean, things I didn't know anything about, and he has kind of walked with us through all of that. And I mean, the proof is right there in Baker. I mean, as we've seen over the last 1.5 years, like, the light started coming back more and more. And there was hard parts to that. Like, don't get me wrong, the detoxing and things like that. And but I mean, if you find, there are people out there that you'll get the feeling like this is right, and there's not pressure, but they're there for you, and like, they truly do want to help. And that, along with you and a couple of, like, just phenomenal therapists that we found for Baker, those are our people. And you have to work hard to find that. Honestly, it's not a simple thing, but very much out there.
And be willing to try, like you said. And there's it's not an either or conversation, it's and, where, she understands that there's no magic wand, and there's a patience of, is this therapy working? There's also, it goes back to intuition. And I've heard Dr. Andy Wakefield, Bobby Kennedy, Del Bigtree, I've heard them all reference mother's intuition. Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, I've heard them all reference we need to go back to trusting ourselves. And God didn't just hand you this child or these challenges and leave you unequipped. There's always that intuitive knowing inside of us. And to practitioners, this is also where I think we want to be everything for everybody. And being able to be in your lane and form a team and help people find the resources they need. We have to work together, because there has to be a community. Takes a village. Yeah. And I'm seeing that after being in Wichita for a decade. I'm seeing more and more and less in some areas of people who want to work together and people who don't. If you, I feel like we have hugged and cried so many different times of just knowing that there were so many divine lessons in this. Yeah. And they're still coming. But hearing him say your name and your husband sharing that last night, he's like, I cry all the time. Just thinking back to everything we've been through and how simple to hear mom, dad. And so for all of us, that gratitude to be with our babies. And I remember ranting to my oldest son, Roman. A 4-year-old patient had recently died of cancer. My mom had passed of cancer. There were different things with Baker and a few other things in my practice going on. I was like, what kind of God does this, right? Immediately go to blame. Yeah. And Roman, my then 12-year-old son, said, I don't know, Mom. I think maybe it's just God's way of telling us we're not doing something right. And I believe it's possible that these brave children are here as angels on earth to help us course correct the decisions that we're making. Yeah. And we have to listen, and we have to be brave enough to go, maybe we're wrong. Maybe that isn't right. And as a fundamental premise, choosing to trust the body's healing ability. Yeah. I want to ask the tough question, do you think his issues were related to his shots?
100%. I mean,
it's a tough question. I mean, it's such a taboo topic, but cutting to the point. When I'd never heard you share about your miscarriage directly in correlation about that. And I know the timelines with Baker, but to the people who say these anti-vax, we're real people, by the way. We have nothing to gain to share stories like this. Quite the opposite, actually. What do you say to people?
I mean, hands down, one of the hardest days for me was, and I knew I had to do it, but getting my medical records and his medical records from the doctor, and specifically our immunization records for he and I. And I mean, it was right there on the paper. And I had kind of started keeping notes in my phone and kind of a handwritten journal of dates when things were happening. And I mean, there's just no question in my mind. It's right there. All of his major symptoms and issues were within days to weeks of him getting these shots. I mean, the same thing with the flu shot. And another lesson to this, I would say, honestly, and I know you and I have had a conversation about this, is what I honestly feel was wildly transformative also in his healing journey was, I don't know that I'll ever forgive myself, truly. I mean, as a mom, I just don't know, but I went through and my husband did also, I think. We still kind of do to this day, but there was so much shame and everything that we carried around, that we had made these decisions with what we thought we were doing well for him, and it did not serve him well at all. And in fact, it harmed him. And there's so much shame that goes into that, because you can't go back, and shame that I think to some degree I kind of like released with you of like, you were right there and you saw it. You saw it way before I saw it. And you were kind of trying to tell me. And it was like, by no fault of your own. But honestly, I don't know. It was like I needed somebody to literally grab me by the arms and say, like, do not take this child anymore. Like, one more time is all it's going to take. And that's what happened. I mean, all it takes is one time for everything to change. And, you know, it's just releasing kind of that guilt and that shame and putting it out there, because it's not serving. It took me a long time to realize that too. Like, that's not serving Baker whatsoever, and it's definitely not serving me. And so I think a big part of the healing was walking through that and to some degree forgiving myself, because I knew, like, we'll never go back, and I will fight with everything to fix this for him. And like you said, I mean, I can't even tell you, I've been called so many names. I've been called crazy, so many different like curse words that I'm out of my mind.
Family, friends, like,
oh yeah,
close relationships of, I mean, it's hard, like, it's black sheep to an extreme, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is, there's so much that goes into this, and it's like nobody stops to think, like, what do these parents
already
like have to gain like by sharing this? But at the end of the day, I always go back, and there's been points where my husband's been like, maybe you shouldn't post that, maybe you shouldn't share that, because he anticipates the backlash that often comes with that. And I'm like, I needed to see that. And so if there's one person, even just one, like mom or dad or somebody out there that maybe sees that, and it maybe stops them for a minute to say, oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to follow the one lane, like, causes them to question or maybe dig deeper and reach out, then it'll have been worth it, because the devastation of going through watching your child in so much pain and misery, and on top of it, like, you feel so helpless and you can't reach them. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
We've had a couple of big moments just over the last few months. We had a mom meetup where I think it, for me, was the first time I heard you, share your story. And then he started making some gains. And then the Freedom Revival, I emceed that event. I ran over and said, hey, no pressure. There's like 800 or 900 people here, but will you go up on stage and share his story? And she did, for Baker. For one kid. That's it. It would take for him or for one other child to be served in that story. And the gains have been exponential. I truly believe that as the healing process and all this happens, as mothers and fathers begin to forgive themselves, you will see these children heal in exponential rates.
Yeah.
I've witnessed it. As you let go of that discord in you, and your system came back into ease, and you let go and it, found peace, he is sparkly.
Oh yeah.
and saying,
and it's kind of like I know it sounds silly, but honestly for us, like, kind of a divine thing. I mean, there's just no other way around it, like that conversation happened with you earlier this summer, I think, and that's really when kind of his healing kind of started making a big positive change. And then it was like early fall and the Freedom Revival, and I shared this then, but the night before the Freedom, we walk him every night, and the night before the Freedom Revival, he said my name for the first time when we were walking. And I don't know, call it what you will, but like, I knew what it was. And, we had so much healing has happened in his bedroom. Yeah, that's in September.
And now he's saying,
oh gosh, he's saying like almost new things daily. And
turkey.
I mean, oh yeah, turkey. even maybe a curse word here or there that he may have learned from me. But listen, like, nobody will be happier to hear their child say a curse word than...
But to hear mom.
Yeah. I never realized how much I took all of those, like, seemingly little things with my older boys for granted until, I mean, it's like what maybe seems like the littlest thing with him. And, like, knowing he understands a joke and, like, him just laughing and laughing, it's like, that's huge for him. And I have so much gratitude for that. And, you know, like, God doesn't forsake you. And so much of this can be for you and is served for you for a bigger purpose if you allow it to be, you know?
I do. And you can see now, I mean, I want to peel back the layers even more. And this is big in and of itself. Yeah. And, you know, I said it, I'll keep saying it. We have expect miracles all over our practice. But I even limit them. Even though I know that the potential for miracles is unlimited, I limit it with my mind. And Baker has blown the lid off of possibility and potential this year. Yeah. And I do believe, I mean, you can look back at a YouTube video I did in March when things started, when they canceled March Madness was actually the straw that I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I think as we see an agenda come out of like worldwide, everybody needs it. Will you be getting it?
No, absolutely not.
What do you think who do they turn to for resources? Because that's the thing. Who do you trust, right? Or, I mean, when we're on this side of it, it's easier for us to go, absolutely. People ask me how I feel and I say, over my dead body.
Truly.
Like, truly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not no thank you. It is no way, no chance. There's nothing, there's no screw you could crank down, no driver's license, passport you could take from me to corner me into that decision for me and mine.
Yeah.
So what do they do? I mean,
yeah.
Are your kids good now? I mean, like, are they healthy?
My kids are...
If you don't... I mean, I think people say, you know, what do you do if you don't do mainstream, right? You just allow them to flourish and you supplement their body, you know. But I think this is the moment in history where we, I think, go back to trusting family and trusting intuition and trusting innate healing. But my kids have never been healthier. When we made the decision, when Roman had his reactions at 6 months, when I made that decision 15 and a half years ago, my kids are the healthiest kids on the planet.
Yeah, and listen, it's uncomfortable, but I can fully admit, I mean, we were those people. Now, I never would have ever, even before when I was kind of, I wouldn't want to say pro-vax, if you will, but like when we followed the schedule for our older boys, I never would have like name called and just said the things that have kind of been said to us and so many other to so many other parents, to other people. But I just kind of quietly disagreed, and I thought, I don't know. But now, I mean, like truly over my dead body, would I ever myself take one, especially the COVID vaccine, or the boys, after seeing what it's done to my kids. And I've never also shared this, but our youngest has certainly not followed the schedule, and he's by far been my healthiest child. And I've since, over the course of the last 2 years, like met so many other families and kids who do not follow the current schedule to whatever degree. And I mean, honestly, they are the healthiest kids. And I don't just mean physical health. I mean, kind of like there's this emotional maturity.
Connected.
They're just connected. That's a great word for it. Yeah.
Well, and it comes down to stress, right? If I have this cup and I fill it up, eventually it overflows. And so for little kids, the schedule when we were young, we got like 8.
Yeah.
Total to 18. Now they get 72 doses of vaccines. 72! So, and then you not only have that, but you have GMOs, you have toxicity in the air, you have emotional strain with virtual learning and separateness in community and the chaos of this year. You have physical stress from learning to walk and falling and, falls, and they're kids, and so you can only their systems can only handle so much stress. So what I see when we have a rise in autism that is just off the charts, a rise in childhood cancer, a rise in asthma, allergy, a rise in obesity, a rise in ADHD, a rise in absolute sickest generation of kids ever.
By far.
It's something we're doing.
Yeah.
Do I think it's one lane? No. I think it's all of it. So I think we need to look at all of it and make more conscious, intentional choices.
Yeah. And if you, like I said, I guess what I would say is just, if you're not sure, just stop for a second. And I don't know that I'd fully recommend what I did, which was just kind of like going off the rails a little bit. But just truly, now's the time. Like, get your hands on whatever you can, research and information, like read peer-reviewed studies. It's on the CDC website. And if you don't know what some of the ingredients are, look it up. Because you don't have to be a doctor or a scientist to read an insert and to understand what that means. And even if it's kind of on Facebook, if you will, search and search until you can, maybe as gently as you can, ask around. Yeah, message people and ask them. And yes, it might be uncomfortable, but this is your children's lives.
And critical thinking is a good thing. So it's not like you and I can escape. ABC had on a special the other night called The Shot. Where, it's like I force myself to listen and to read as much as like on a constitutional level. I'm like, it goes against everything now, but I'm 15 years into this conversation. So, but I force myself to go, am I wrong? Am I now, is this my ego? Or what am I not seeing? How can I see this differently? How can I ask questions? Because critical thinking, we all have a lot to unlearn and rebuild. That we have learned this year. That I'm certain of. And so I think that the upcoming year will be very interesting. And as you navigate tough decisions, like she said, your intuition, let it be your guide.
Yeah. And it's never, I'm 35 years old. It can be difficult, but it is never too late to unlearn. It's going to be like really challenging because you've spent a lifetime kind of accumulating this certain mindset, and that's hard to walk back through that and kind of walk out of it and relearn things, but it's never too late to learn new information and to change course.
Listening in and pausing and speaking up. Once you do learn the truth, it becomes your responsibility to share it. That I also believe. Now, whether you do that on a one-on-one with friends and family, or you get really vocal in social media, or you're a practitioner, or you're a mom on a mission, I still am predicting you see a best-selling book come from her. No pressure, but it's in there. And for now, this was just two women from Wichita who have had an adventure, or we're in the middle of one, and we wanted to share it with you. And if there's questions or testimonies or challenging ideas, our truth doesn't need to be your truth, but we do need to all have this conversation for our children and for our future. So thank you for being with us today. We'll make sure there's links and resources in the comments, and a way to get a hold of Miss Rachel if you have questions for her directly. But guys, life is learning, life is transformation, and it's one brave step at a time. So I'm here for you. We love you.
Yes. Thank you.